Prosperity is my friend Kirk, and
Got it.
the broker of our company.
Oh yeah. Kirk Wachter, right?
Kirk Wechter, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I haven't seen him in forever. How's he doing?
Kirk, how you doing? I think he has himself muted. Unmute yourself.
Yo, Kirk.
Yo, it's actually Steve Ohm. I don't know why it says Prosperity Team.
What's up, Steve Ohm, you maniac?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. How you been?
I've been pretty good. Living
Life, baby. That's it.
living life. I'm actually on a call, so I'm kind of in between.
Gotcha.
Did you call that lady on Reese Street?
No, not yet.
Okay. All right, so might as well start. I guess it shows my age, my level of expert or lack of expertise.
Well, do you want to keep you have David Sloffman, that's the audio coming through, and then it says Betty Santiago Sloffman. So your video's up twice. You want to kill the Betty one?
Yeah, hold on.
I can't, it's a little too early in the day to be looking at two of you, man.
Yeah, but one of them has audio, the other one doesn't.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Dave Sloffman has the audio.
Right, that's my cell phone.
Okay.
What the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, Zoom's been acting funny, man. I heard it's like bandwidth issues with all the schools and everybody using it from home, so who knows?
Meeting. Okay. Now, is there one of me?
Just one. Perfect.
Okay, you only need one, right?
That's it, man.
So, I don't know who else is on the call.
Looks like just you, me, and Prosperity, which I guess is Steve.
Yeah. I guess maybe because it's early in the day and a lot of people are still sleeping.
Probably.
Like, I've been doing a lot of cold calling, and I have someone working for me in the Philippines and in Nicaragua.
Oh, okay.
And they get back to me and they're like, we start calling people and nobody answers the phone until at least noon or later.
Yeah.
And I said, well, don't even bother calling. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
The
new quarantine schedule.
So everybody on this call already sort of knows each other. To what extent, I'm not sure how much Steve knows you. You've really not been in the real estate space for a while now, correct?
No, that's not true at all.
But you're still in it.
Yeah, I've never gotten out of it. I've been doing deals in Florida. Just put 4 under contract last week.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been doing different with some former coaching students, things of that nature. I'm wholesaling a property right over in Ewing, New Jersey. So no, I mean nowhere near like I used to, But no, I'm still got things going. In fact, I'm looking to ramp that up with everything going on.
Right. I think it makes a lot of sense. And what are your students finding as the best form of marketing?
So they're all former students. I mean, this goes way back, after the course, and I did the coaching and all, but we've stayed in touch. There's about a dozen people I stay in touch with, and we just JV on deals now. Sometimes I'll just come in and kind of advise them and help them and let them use one of my negotiators or things like that. I'll just get like 10, 20%, a little override, but not much. And some are truly 50-50 JVs. But I'll tell you what, Florida, just like back in 2007, it's really starting to take a turn. The amount of short sales are just going through the roof. My guy, Don, who's actually down in Orlando, he does the whole state, but his focus, of course, is Orlando. And these are the 4 that I'm doing with him. I mean, on his own, he's got just so far, well, April's almost over, but in the month of April, 28 deals under contract, all short sales, all shorts.
How is he, what's his marketing plan?
So what he does is he goes straight for the courthouse records with the notice of default, and he just starts making phone calls. He's got himself, which he actually doesn't even do the calls anymore. He trained a few people to just call the homeowners. He's got a really good skip tracing program, so he's able to get the numbers for a good portion of them, and then they bang the phones. That's it.
So it's direct sales.
Yeah, 100%. He doesn't even do any mailings, so it's just all phone work.
That's where we're at right now, actually.
What's up, Kirk?
Kirk's on the line.
Yo,
How you been, man?
doing all right. Yeah, that's exactly where we're at. We've been just calling hard, like 500 to 1,000 numbers a day.
Wow. Okay. Are you targeting foreclosures as well, like NODs and things like that?
No, not specifically. Yeah, not specifically. We kind of match based on what our active buyers are. We dive into the market based on that, so we know we
Got
can
it.
sell.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that I've observed is a little bit of an attitude with people that you cold call compared to those that call you, that whatever marketing you're doing, whether it's online, whether it's, postcards, whatever it is, the ones that, in other words, raise their hand by contacting you via email or contacting you via phone call, those people are pretty open right now, and they don't have as much of an attitude as people that you call.
Right.
Because generally, the ones that you call, they're like, well, you called me, I want $100,000 and I want it in cash and I want it now. And, it's like they put on a front, like a tough guy or tough woman front. Why are you calling me? All this
Yeah.
fake being offended stuff,
Yeah.
and so it's a different conversation.
Well, it's funny you say that because Don down in Florida, he only uses women. He trained 2, maybe 3 now, women to make these outbound calls. He finds that they're a little less likely to be cursed at and screamed at if it's a woman calling. So he went that route, but.
Yeah, that's very true. So, I want to hear your view of the market, where it was, where it is now in this very weird dormant period, I would call it, and where you think it's going to go. And so, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny you say that. I've actually been really reconnecting with a lot of people from my past, people back 07, 08, 09. Chris McLaughlin down in Florida, Nathan Jurwitz, they, of course, created the first short sales course that really hit it big, which was Short Sales Riches. I think they launched that in 2008, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And
I remember, I was there.
Yeah. And so then they did 2.0, I think in 2010. And then they said, we're done with that. So me and Jeff Watson kind of carried that mantle, and Nate actually helped me do the course. We called it Flip Free Profits, which was a little bit of a different twist. But, I've been speaking to Nate, I've been speaking to Chris, and a lot of people down in the Tampa area. And, a lot of people are talking about what to do now from the education space, because it is a lot different than it was back then. A lot more restrictions. Things are different. We're not going to see the same spreads that we did back then. I mean, obviously, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but one of the things that happened back then was the rapid decline in the values of the homes.
Yeah.
We're not seeing that. Right. What we are going to see, and what the consensus is, I did a webinar with Jeff Watson recently, is that the number one problem that is probably going to rear its ugly head in about 3 to 4 months are the people going with the forbearance, unless Congress steps in. And I just read something about that today. But right now, as you guys know, with the traditional forbearance, let's say they give them 3 months and they don't have to pay. Well, month 4, you have a balloon payment due, right? Now, if it's a Fannie Freddie, the whole FHFA situation, that's not the case. But 57, 58, we don't know what the percentage is, but in the 50s, that's the Fannie Freddie owned mortgages. All the other ones where they sold it off or hold the paper, like even Bank of America, regardless of who the servicer is, these people are going to have some issues, come July, August. So a lot of people are saying that's when things are really going to pop. I did read an article this morning, and I posted it actually on Facebook, that there are certain bills that haven't passed yet in Congress to make it an across-the-board situation where people aren't going to be crushed in 3 to 4 months with these balloon payments because they did a forbearance. You know what I mean? That's not law yet, but obviously that's what they're pushing for. So we'll see,
Well, the one that I find that's really interesting is the one where not only are they going to send you a stimulus check, regardless of even whether you're a citizen or not.
Right.
They're going to not only do that, but they're going to pay your rent. And if you're a property owner, pay your mortgage. I think that's wild. And I just think to myself, well, what would be the the purpose in doing something like that. And I think it's to keep the market from completely collapsing and going into chaos.
Right.
Because, you know, everybody, the way our economy works is everybody owes everybody something, you know, and
Well, even with those steps, Dave, think about it. Like they're not. It's not. Even if Congress steps in and says, "Okay, well, it's going to be 6 months, or give them a year, or whatever the case may be," you're only kicking the can down the road. And a lot of people have lost jobs that they're not going to be there for them anymore, because a lot of small businesses have gone and will continue to go out of business. Specifically, restaurants. I heard 20 some, maybe some articles, 30% of small restaurants may
half
not
of them
reopen.
hotel.
Right.
Yeah.
What do these people do? Well, okay, well, you know, if they can't afford it now, obviously you could say, well, they can go get another job, but, you know, I don't know. There's just so much confusion. I mean, nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Right, because in an economy where there's the speed of the dollar,
Yeah.
and it's we're living in a time where the dollar, because of the virus, has slowed down, and so a lot of businesses work on a very short margin. You don't know what's going to still be around. I live in Northeast Philadelphia, not far from Roosevelt Mall, and I drove to the mall the other day to go to Chipotle, and next to the Chipotle, there's a Modell's that's been there ever since I can remember, like since I was a kid. And I looked in the window and it said everything's like 80% off as soon as I guess they get a chance to open again, and going out of business. I'm like, wow, you know. And you know, I see big companies like AMC Movies filing for bankruptcy. I think Macy's, Neiman Marcus. I think that we're not only going to see just bankruptcies. I think what we're also going to see is a reordering of things, a rethinking of what businesses are necessary, what businesses are just, they were already failing to begin with, so they were already sort of in a weakened state.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever runs those businesses say, you know, I'm just going to throw in the towel, or I'm going to go online, or I'm going to do something else. But that's capitalism.
Yeah.
You know, my concern is when the government steps in and gives businesses that were going to fail anyway money, and then they close anyway. So what happens with that money?
Right. Right.
But getting back to, you know, what's relevant to us, I mean, how does it affect property owners when the government steps in and says, all right, well, I'm going to guarantee you the rent. However, there's all these strings attached. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you raise rents for 5 years. You can't do this. You can't do that. You know, there's always, oh, by the way, you know, whenever you deal with the government, especially when they have you by the short ones, and they're dictating the terms of the negotiation. It's a one-way negotiation. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, and anytime you have the government, you know, basically becoming your business partner because they, quote, you know, bailed you out, I don't like it, man. That's communism to me. I don't like any part of it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I think that we've already been seeing what I think of as a very sharp divide politically in our country, that even allows us to do what we do, you know, right now, which is free market, capitalism. Being an entrepreneur is, okay, here's a human need in X, and how can I create a business or a company or a service that will take care of as many people as possible based on that need. Well, when you have government interference and restriction, that makes it far more difficult for us to do what we do to help provide things for people in an efficient way. Government by nature is very inefficient. And so a lot of people now are talking about, well, we need more socialism, we need more government. And they think that, oh, it's not going to impact your freedom. You're damn right it's going to impact your freedom. It's not going to make you a freer human being.
Right.
Make you less free. I mean, that's just my opinion.
I agree, man. Yeah. I mean, and that's the whole thing. Everything that we're going through, it came out of the blue. It came on so fast. Here we all, quarantined or on lockdown or house arrest, whatever you want to call it.
House
And,
arrest.
Yeah.
A friend of mine's in jail right now, and it's really, a lot of people want to apply to get out early.
Yeah.
He's in federal prison, which is a little different. He's in a camp in near Allentown in the mountains,
Mhm.
and they have him locked down 22 hours a day with a mask on, and he just sits by his toilet and does push-ups all day long.
Yeah.
Not much he can do, and
Like Steve Ohm does push-ups all day long, right?
you can see he's yoked.
Wim Hof.
So yeah, all day, and there's nothing you can do about it. And when they talk to the warden's like, "Look, I know a lot of you are eligible for early release because of the virus, but I think that you're better off in here because in here we have 0 cases. Some of you are vulnerable because some of you are older, and you're in a hurry to get back to, especially, and most of the guys are from New York." He said, you're in a rush to get back to a world that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You have more structure here and normalcy than you will out there, especially Philly, not so much, but New York, yeah.
Mhm.
And so and there's no, so normally if you're in a prison you have to file a motion. Well, where do you file a motion when there's no court, let alone when the majority of the judges in that court are older white and Jewish guys and older Jewish black men and black women, federal judges.
Mhm.
Think they're in any hurry to step into a courtroom in their 70s or their 60s,
No.
right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I was talking to my attorney about, who was on the call with my attorney the other night? I know Kirk was, right, Kirk? Anyway, yeah, I know he was.
Yeah, it was good.
He was silent, just like he is now. It's probably naked. That's
No, I was there.
probably like dancing, and we can't see him naked.
He's doing push-ups.
Or he's doing push-ups. So one of the things that, so one of my attorneys, his name is David Denenberg, and he's third generation lawyer that specializes mainly in landlord-tenant. And what he said to me privately was actually different than what he said to me publicly. What he said to me privately, he said, "You'll be lucky if by the time from the time you file your landlord-tenant complaint, if you're a landlord, you'll be lucky if between a year to a year and a half, you get a hearing."
Yeah.
Right. And already in April,
You mean
30%
for an eviction, you mean?
for an eviction in Philadelphia. And he said, he said, "David, if you're a Philadelphia judge, and a tenant stands in front of you and says, 'Your Honor, I haven't been able to pay my rent. I work in a restaurant. First, I got laid off from the restaurant. Then when the quarantine was lifted after several months, I went back to work, and there was no work there anymore. The place is closed down. And I worked in the restaurant industry my whole life. The landlord knew that. I've been looking for work, and I haven't even received my unemployment yet. And even let's say if he had, it wouldn't be enough to pay for food and pay for rent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do, Your Honor. I'm going to throw my family in the street. And it would be one thing if it was one guy, but it's going to be everybody that's going in front of the judge, possibly, I'm going to say using that same story, but we'll just use the term uttering the same things. So if you're a Philadelphia judge, what are you going to do? Are you going to throw all these families into the street?
Well, that brings up a whole nother discussion. I mean, we were talking about the people who were impacted, lost their job, lost their income for their primary residence. you shift the topic over now to renters. What does that do to all the landlords? I mean, yeah, sure, you can't kick them out. Well, most landlords can't afford to pay the mortgage if there's no rent coming in. So there's another foreclosure, package, if you will, waiting to happen. What about all the landlords, and how long are they going to continue to pay the mortgage when their tenants aren't paying them? So that's a whole nother bucket.
Question for you on that. If I'm a landlord and I have properties and I'm not able to pay my mortgage, my PITI or what have you, and then I get foreclosed on, now do the tenants of these properties, are they allowed to be kicked out by the banks now? Or do they get to keep living there rent free?
Talking in Philly?
I'm talking about wherever, because
So
like
this is how it works, right? I can tell you from firsthand experience. So when I had all my rentals, I had leases, but the leases were from my tenant to me or my company. I was the landlord. They were the tenant. Now, with some lenders, they have something called an assignment of rents. Do you know what that means? It means that if I don't pay you as a landlord, I don't pay my loan, they can walk in front of a judge and say, Your Honor, we want to collect the rents on behalf, because we have this assignment of rents form, which is an agreement. If I don't pay them, they get to collect directly. Well, it didn't work out so well for them. Banks were not set up to be property managers, and they thought that I wasn't paying them because I'm a deadbeat. No, I wasn't paying them because they weren't paying me.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a tricky thing in Philadelphia if you're a bank trying to evict a tenant. A lot of them, if they don't have the original lease, they don't have the business privilege license, they don't have all their ducks in a row, and they're not set up the way I was set up in case that my tenant evicted me, then they have to apply for all those forms. And if also they don't have the original lease, the courts might not accept the complaint for eviction. So then if that's the case, they have to either do an ejectment action, which can cost each action can cost anywhere between $3,000 to $6,000, somewhere in there, depending on what lawyer. And I'm sure they have expensive lawyers hourly, so they're not going to get the cheap one. And also it can take up to a year and a half under normal circumstances, but I'm sure that because of the backlog in courts and the amount of filings that are going to take place, that's going to be as delayed as foreclosures, as delayed as evictions, and who knows what other cases, right? Because you have to go in front of a common pleas judge. It's a different animal altogether.
And once it forecloses, they're out on the street regardless. I mean, you think back 8, 9, and 10. Once they foreclose, they're out. I mean, they're depending, like you said, on the backlog, how long that's going to take. But what I saw happen a lot, and this is when I was really, ramping up the whole thing, 8, 9, 10. We dealt with properties all around the whole country, and it was a very common situation where the homeowner would stop paying. So they're the landlord, they're not paying the mortgage, but the tenant keeps paying. Once the tenant finds out, oh, well, they're not paying the mortgage because a letter came to the door, right? Now they're like, well, screw you, I'm not paying the rent. But they only screwed themselves, because now, think about it, they're not paying the rent, so now they're basically squatting, you understand? And so it just became, and again, it was obviously jurisdiction by jurisdiction, what they could do. Philadelphia seems a lot more tenant friendly, right?
Totally.
But how is it once it's foreclosed on, right? Like, my point is, if you're getting foreclosed on because the tenant is not paying you rent, and then the bank, because there's a foreclosure, is able to get the person out of there who wasn't paying rent, now they get rid of the problem that caused the foreclosure. Or, you know what I mean? It's like they're able to foreclose on you because X didn't happen, and then they just remove X factor, and now they got the asset without the,
Okay, well, it depends on what you mean. So you have to be specific on your question.
Okay.
Are you asking us what happens? You said foreclosure. All foreclosure is a complaint in the court.
Okay.
The beginning, as soon as I file the complaint, the property's in default, and as the lender, I'm noticing the world that I'm suing you as a landlord. That doesn't mean, however, that I already have the property just because I filed
Gotcha.
a complaint. So you have to be careful on what stage of foreclosure you're asking us about if you want us
Sure.
to answer the question. So be a
Gotcha.
little bit more specific. Maybe ask it a different way. I don't know.
Okay. Sure.
Well,
So
you mean, Steve, once it's sold at auction, whether the bank takes it back or somebody else, right?
Usually the banks take
Right.
these back on the writ.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
correct. And then what happens to the tenant who is in the property that wasn't paying that caused the landlord not to be able to pay? Do they remain in the property or do they?
Water at that point.
Evicted. They're forcibly evicted. But the sheriff,
Exactly. So the bank is allowed to perform on an asset in a way that the individual landlord is not allowed to act on, given the current circumstances in this scenario here. Like,
And right, listen, like Brian said, it depends jurisdiction by jurisdiction.
mhm.
So for example, if this happens at Montgomery County compared to Philadelphia County, it's different. If this happens between Philadelphia and Miami, it's different. Louisiana, different. Okay? So when you ask the question, you also have to ask, okay, where is this happening?
Gotcha.
Right? Okay. But my experience in Philadelphia, which is where all my properties were, informs me that it's not so easy. I'll put it to you this way. About 13 of the I owed about on 35 properties to one bank, right? Third Federal. Remember Third Federal became BB&T? To this day, and they foreclosed on me in 2010, where my office used to be on Rising Sun Avenue, okay? That property's sitting there fucking empty with my name on it and my old phone number.
10 years later.
Years later,
Oh,
I drive by and my kids are like, Dad, why is our last name on that building?
You should go change the phone number and update it.
I got
Free advertising.
well, I tried to get the old phone number, but somebody owns it and I can't buy it because it's basically a billboard with my name on it, right? A couple of years ago, I had a car, and the car was registered to that address because I used to use that address for mailing, and I went to sell the car, and they mailed the title over there, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get them to send the title to my house. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. The building's empty. So I broke in, and I broke in through the back. And the way it was set up is a storefront and a 3-bedroom house in the back. And when I broke in, I looked around. Everything had been stripped. When I mean everything, the hardwood floors, the toilets, a lot of the windows, the plumbing, the heating system, the whole. I put a whole new electrical box in there.
Copper pipes gone.
Oh, out.
Right. So that's the other thing that I think is going to happen too, and I've seen it happen. I'm sure, Brian, I presume you've seen it happen where whether it's the tenant that's being evicted or the person that's lived in the property that's getting foreclosed on gets evicted. And let's say, 5 years ago when everything was good, they decided to put a brand new kitchen, brand new bathroom, all this stuff in their properties. Guess what? They're leaving. They're taking it with them.
Oh
So
my
they're
God, dude. I mean,
gonna loot the property.
not only that, sometimes they would vandalize it so bad with spray paint and
Right.
just punching holes in walls and like turn the water on and leave, flood the place. I mean, just crazy, crazy things.
Petty shit.
Yeah, really bad, man, really bad. And you know what? It's one of those things where so the whole way it all came about, when I created the course with Jeff and we launched that, it went nationwide. So we had an offer basically saying, hey, if you want to JV and partner with us, you got to have the boots on the ground. You need a realtor. You need this, you need that. But we have a staff of, at that time, 16 full-time negotiators, so we can handle that. We'll provide the paperwork. You bought the course, whatever. So yes, that's people say all the time, well, how the hell did you do all those deals and 1,000 deals all around the country? Well, because our involvement was minimal, but we got paid on the transaction. But the point in that, Dave, is if you think and you go back through the whole thing, the worst deals for us were always the investment deals, always. Because number one, when the bank found out it was an investment property, they would never, the negotiators would always fight you harder than if it was poor little homeowner. Oh, this is an investor. And they would literally, the negotiations, they wouldn't discount as much if it was an investor deal. Plus, they had different guidelines from underwriting on the negotiation process if it wasn't owner-occupied primary residence, right? So that plus the fact of the tenants, obviously, if it's an investment property, there's tenants. It was a nightmare, Dan. It was really difficult. We didn't get the discount, so it wasn't as profitable, and we had all this garbage you do with the tenants. So I really tried staying away from them for the most part, unless there was like really good comps and a good spread on paper. It was bad.
Well,
and again,
Steve's
the only
question,
thing I think,
because I forget, you have
this whole issue with tenants.
the whole cash for keys thing. So I think the average was about $3,000 that homeowners or tenants would get to move
Back then?
Yeah.
Oh man, dude, Chase at one point was given 10 grand.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chase in particular, I had quite a few people get 10 grand. You know what I mean?
Give Steve an example.
So
what would you have them sign, or was it a bank form, and when would they receive the money, stuff like that?
So they wouldn't receive the money until they actually vacated the property. Okay. They had to actually prove they left. They would normally have somebody go and inspect the property, which was normally a local agent, at least in Florida. I did two in if you heard Port St. Lucie, two come to mind. I did down there, and
nice area.
Yeah, really nice. And so they were both investment properties. And again, it's one of those things where if they had on paper a greater chance to make more money at the auction, they wouldn't even entertain the short sale. You know what I'm saying? But in Florida, the values tanked so bad that they were just basic. They just wanted everybody out, and they were just throwing around money like crazy. Now, there were certain amounts that they would allot. The average was $3,000. It was $3,000, depending on the type of loan that it was. But some of them, especially if they were privately held, they weren't Fannie, Freddie, et cetera, FHA, they were just standard loans on their books. Dude, 10 grand. There was a guy, actually, that reminds me, there's a guy I did a deal with in out by QVC, I guess in Westchester area, whatever, Pennsylvania, out that way. The guy, now he was a veteran, and I don't know how this comes into play, but he got 20 grand to leave the house.
Was he the homeowner, or was he?
He was the homeowner.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot. I've never heard of that.
That was the highest I ever heard. 20,000. It was out.
How was he able to get that much money?
I don't know. It was obviously not, a Fannie Freddie. It was some type of private investor, whoever held the paper, and they just determined, hey, if we get this guy out, we give him $20,000. And we talked about, it's funny, we did a webinar when we were launching 2.0, and we were talking about people getting money, and that was like the biggest I ever heard of. The guy got 20 grand. You know what I mean? So it's crazy, man. And again, who knows if any of that stuff's going to come back. It's a very different time right now. I mean, think about it. Again, the values are still there. There hasn't been this drop off in the value. And is that going to happen? When is it going to happen? I mean, realtors really aren't working. Steve, they are, but they're not, right? Everything's all jammed up.
Well, we are.
You're not able to get out.
My brother is a home inspector. He, primarily does New Jersey. You guys all met him, Brandon. And, he was doing 3 a day, 6 days a week himself, not to mention his other inspectors.
Right.
So you're talking, he was pulling in, 18 inspections a week, just himself. What's today? Tuesday. I spoke to him over the weekend. So far for this week, he only had 3 scheduled total for the company. Why? Because people are canceling. They lost their job. They no longer qualify for the mortgage.
You don't want him in the house.
They don't want him in the house. The FHA on a lot has raised the requirements as far as your minimum FICO score. People aren't qualifying anymore who were already qualified.
Yeah, that's good.
Just deals falling all apart, man. It's crazy.
When the banks a couple of weeks ago raised the FICO from 580 minimum to 700 plus minimum, 3% down to 20% down minimum. Right there, to me, that was a signal that they're bracing for impact.
Mm-hmm.
And the impact is going to be the potential of foreclosures,
Yeah.
you know? And not only that, but I mean, has anyone considered like there may be a run on banks? If we're a loss in confidence in the currency when, you know, if no one does anything but really spend money on food, what is that going to do to the price of food?
Yeah.
So while we're seeing a collapse in the demand side of gas, right, because the world is at a standstill, might we not only see an increase in cost of food?
Well, aren't they? Didn't they just destroy 2 million chickens? And I saw one farmer destroyed $1 million of value in lettuce crop.
Okay, so
You know, things like that. So it's like there's going to be a shortage at some point.
depends on how long this goes, you know? And, you know, I guess part of me also wonders, okay, because human beings are very panicky, you know? First of all, just so everyone's clear, I'm not afraid of this virus, you know? So I try to look at things objectively and from a statistical standpoint. If you're young and you're healthy, meaning you're not fat, okay? You don't have high blood pressure. You don't have a BMI over a certain number. I think it's what, 20, 25 or something, 27. You don't have any underlying medical conditions. The chances of anything serious happening to you are very low because you have this thing called an immune system, which has been around since human beings are human beings. The problem is that we have about 35% and rising obesity rate. So you're already sick. We just don't call you that because it would be rude, right? But if you were that same human being and you're, you know, 5'9", 300 pounds, and we were hunter gatherers, and every day it was my job, Brian's job, Kirk's job, and Steve's job, including your fat ass, to go out and hunt every day on the savannah, you're dead. Now, you're either dead because we're going to murder you because you're not pulling your own fucking weight. When it comes time to eat, you're going to eat more than all of us, and all of us have a certain requirement for calories, so you're a liability, right? Or, you know, we're out there hunting and we're throwing spears, and you can't throw a fucking spear, even if you were able to make contact with that, I don't know, water buffalo, let's say, and we spear it. Water buffalo doesn't die right away. It runs for a couple of, let's say it runs for a mile or two. We have to catch it before any other predators get it, and then we have to pick it up and haul it back to our campsite and strip it. And my point is, if you do the math from a caloric standpoint, you're a fucking liability. Now, in a society that has an abundance of food, right? Think about it this way. We have so much food. We have, what, at least 3 or 4 cable channels and who knows how many YouTube channels dedicated to food porn. Food's not just for consumption. Food's for entertainment. What? Okay. I've always seen fat people and unhealthy people as a liability, you know, and now this virus is indeed exposing them as the liability that they are. Now, maybe that's mean, but maybe I'm a little Darwinian. I don't know. Nature doesn't give a fuck. So.
Reminds me of the time me, Steve, and Kirk went, we played paintball.
Right?
Oh, man. No, I hear you, man. It's
hard. What about what I said reminds you of that? Just curious.
You're just talking about hunting and survival.
Survival.
And I had this flashback of us in our fatigues playing paintball.
The sad thing is that's our closest encounter with survival.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not hunting water buffalo with paintball guns.
Right,
Well,
right.
most of the games that human beings play have everything to do with survival and replication and war, right? They're just prophylactics because we've become so we've evolved so much as a species that we've gotten away from all those things that we really needed as a species when there was only 10,000 of us on this planet. Now there's close to 8 billion, but we still have that same hardwiring.
Yeah.
The thing I'm really impressed by through all this virus stuff is what a small world we're in now. And we've reached a critical mass where we can't even act like we're not one organism on some level. Like we really are. And it was, we have a company overseas, halfway across the world in Macedonia, right?
Right.
It was like 2 days they had their first case, and then all of a sudden, like things started popping up here, and I was like, wow, this is all moving very quick. So we're going to be forced to start thinking differently, and hopefully not thinking as individuals as much anymore, but realizing that we're just, we're a piece of a larger organism.
I think it's dangerous not to think as an individual, because that there's a fine line. You always want to have that balancing act between what you're saying, which is, obviously we're all one, we should care about each other, et cetera, et cetera. But the powers that be using that kumbaya instinct to guilt us into ways of thinking along a collective that suppress individual freedom and suppress individual mindsets and it's a contrarian perspective from an entrepreneur to some extent, right?
Well, it's what you said earlier, man. Think about it. Like, this is the first time in history, quarantine by definition means quarantining the sick, not the healthy. So what the hell's going on? Did anybody ever stop, pull back from the news, the narrative, and say, what are we doing? I get these flashes of insight sometimes, like I'm driving around this morning. I go over to the bank, and of course, TD Bank doesn't open until 9:30, and it's only the drive-through. And as I'm driving through town, every other car, the person driving down the road had a mask on in their car. And I made a funny post about that on Facebook the other day. I said, do you wear condoms in bed when you're alone too?
I thought that's very funny.
Being silly, stupid. But it really makes you wonder, like, as a society, we've become so conditioned to just trust the narrative and just go along with it. And you have, last weekend, I took the kids to the park, Tyler State Park, just walking all around. And again, about 50% of the people were walking with a mask on in the park, in the wide open.
On a hot day, and it hasn't even gotten hot.
Like, I don't know, man. It just, and I just, you know what? I try and give that to each his own, not judge people, but man, it's the ability of a government to control us this quickly without too many people. And it's one of those things. It's divided, right? God forbid you go on Facebook or say something about, let's get back to work. Let's open up. How dare you? You want to kill everybody? You want a second resurgence? Like, it's like
it's a shaming tactic.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I think it's interesting too, in that, like, all right, we're talking about our freedoms and so forth, and how amazing it is for the government to shut down and make these changes so quickly. But I was really impressed with China and how quickly they built a hospital and how quickly they mobilized, which, it was really impressive. I mean, did that, and I don't want to speak like I'm truly.
When you're a dictator, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Well, when you're authoritarian, yeah, I mean, you can make it all happen. But that being said, though, the speed at which they were able to move, weren't they able to contain it and control it much more quickly?
Listen to me. China right now is building, I think it is 10 cities, like right now, and they've been building them. 10 5G cities that will hold between 8 and 10 million people apiece. Wrap your fucking head around that.
That's insane.
And they're probably empty now, right?
With our dollars, by the way.
Yeah.
China is Frankenstein's monster, and we're Frankenstein.
All right.
You know what happened to Frankenstein when Frankenstein's monster became a little bit out of control, right?
Ripped his head off, I think, right?
Like, killed him.
Well, I don't know if you're following Ray Dalio. I always found him to be a very practical
Yeah.
and like.
And I listened to him records.
So I mean, he's pretty much like, guys, this is the end of the American Empire. This is the end of the American dollar, which naturally it's bound to happen. But I wonder what that new reality looks like. How does that function? You know, what's our place in the world now?
That nobody know, and that's the thing, Kirk. Nobody knows, and that's like I really refrain from posting anything on Facebook because you can't post it. Maybe everybody's got too much damn time on their hands, but like everybody wants to argue, everybody wants to fucking debate everything. The sky's blue. No, it's really fucking green. Like literally, like you can't even be vocal about anything because you're gonna get that debate. People want to fight and argue, and I have no interest. I have no interest. Like I was talking to my wife earlier, and she said something, and I was like, oh, well, somebody said this. I'm like, so? Like, I don't know, man. I'm actually really starting to, like, despise social media. And I've really been pulling back from it because, you know, for business reasons, you got to be visible. And I'm building my new brand, the virtual entrepreneur, to get away from just being a real estate short sale guy. I do other things you guys know. And I don't know, man. The one thing that people have been debating me on is to say the housing market, there will be no change. And as soon as we open up, we're going back to normal. I'm sorry. You're fucking wrong and you're stupid if you really believe that.
Cinderella is still asleep.
You know what I mean? Like, we're going to open up and it's going to go right back to, really?
Cinderella wakes up, there's going to be a handsome prince.
Yeah.
And a cock. Ready to fuck.
Yeah. Frogs.
Cinderella's going to have to flip over and get fucked in the ass.
You know? So it's like, I'm not even trying to debate them anymore. Like, I'm just preparing with a frog. But you know what I'm saying, man? Like, I'm just trying to prepare my life, my business, my contacts. I don't know what's going to happen any more than anybody else does. But you know what? If I have access to certain capital, and I do now, big difference with me and my investing strategies, I have access to capital now, being in the industry all these years, that I didn't back then. And there's a lot of things I could have and would have liked to do back then, but I had to use short-term transactional funding in order to do flips and pay 2 points, dough for a day, all that back in the day. Now there's a lot more capital, private capital, people scared of the market crashing. Can you hear me? Am I good?
My audio went out, I'm sorry.
Yeah. The market going, people are scared, obviously. And so there's a lot of capital available. So when, in my opinion, things do take a turn, I'm aligning myself with the right people, recontacted a lot of people that I know are very good at working with banks and negotiating. Lady I called up, God, it's been 7 years since I spoke to her. This lady, Judy. Who else? My friend Michael out in California. Just Michael Obering. Different people I worked with back then, some of the best. I'm just rekindling the relationship. Hey, have you been? What have you been up to? Hey, would you be interested in some part-time work? If I'm going to be picking up a lot more deals nationwide, would you be interested in doing some negotiating or what have you? So I'm kind of feel like it's a chess game, right? And I'm starting to move all my little pieces around, not really knowing what's going to happen, but I'd rather be prepared and be able to make some moves because I have, 14 more years experience this time around,
I think it's a safe bet.
What about you though? I mean, you're still investing in the city. Like, what are you planning and shifting from your end?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Okay, so I anticipated something happening because you look at the business cycle every 8-10 years, some bullshit. I didn't know, whatever. Whether it's made up or whether it's not made up, it generally happens. And I just didn't know what it was going to be. I thought that the market was overvalued, because how is someone going to buy, a property for $120,000 that rents for $1,500 and make any money? I mean, I don't get it. Especially now in the city of Philadelphia, they've been raising taxes, and also, if you're going to be a landlord, they're going to put all these impositions on you. Well, you need this, you need that, you need to prove this. Anyway, and then that, and you know, when your shoe shine boy, your dry cleaner, and your hairstylist are giving you advice about how great the real estate market is and what you should do to invest, that's a canary in the coal mine for them.
Yeah.
Right. Especially when they know that, you know, I've been doing this a long time. So I've been doing nothing but wholesaling for a couple of years. I just didn't feel it was worth investing. And also, people are like, oh, why don't you buy, fix, and flip? Well, a lot of times the spreads on those became thinner and thinner as well, just because people, because of reality shows, because of a lot of things, you know, started getting into that space too. And I'm like, why do that? Also, why go through the trouble of buying and fixing a property just to sell it? You know, I'd rather rent it. But the problem there is, well, there's no spread on these rentals, you know? So I know.
Our mutual friend Jason Centeno moving down to Florida. It looks like he picked a good time, man. If he's going to still be in
awesome.
Yeah.
He's like, I said, well, I even said to him the other day, well, the other thing I worry about with Jason is, you know, he's been a firefighter for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to get a pension.
Mm-hmm.
And the pensions are invested mainly in the mortgage market, the bond market. And what is it, like 70% of all pensions in the United States are underfunded, undercapitalized. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen to that if that market collapses along with all the other collapses?
Yeah.
But I'm not all that worried about Jason, because Jason's like one of us. He knows how to hustle.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, he's already thought of different things that he's going to do. My concern is
is that a statue of Lenin behind you?
Me?
Right here?
Yeah.
No, it's a head cast of me from when I was 18.
I'm just kidding.
I mean, I could be a dictator. I mean, I could be a dick.
Yeah, right.
I'm not about the tater.
Guys, it's 10:58. I got a webinar. I got to do it in 2 minutes. But thanks for having me on, man. It was good to connect with you guys again. And
so I have the feeling we're going to be working together very, very soon.
I think so, man. I think it's inevitable, and I'm just planning on, you know, look, we got a title company here. We got an agent. We got investors. We got a nice little package. We could all work together.
Yep.
And it's going to be there. So, you know, why not? Hey, Kurt, are you still doing the construction also, or are you just focused on title now these days? Oh, you're muted.
Not so much construction. It's still there, but
Yeah.
we have property management, title, property insurance, reverse sales, and all that stuff.
Got it. Plus the brokerage.
Imagine all the new OSHA restrictions that are going to be in place.
Yeah, just opening the doors right now. You know,
Yep.
gotta like go and like clean the handles every time somebody leaves.
Oh, you're going to need this new.
But don't worry. After this is all over, they're all going to go away.
You're going to need all these new filters for your heating systems.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting. But no,
We're all fighters and we're all survivors, so we'll be just fine. So, and actually, let me change the tone of that.
Better.
Let's not just survive here. Let's prosper here, right? Because there's always opportunity.
This is going to be the largest wealth transfer for the last 100 years.
I'm ready, man. It's time. All right, gentlemen, let's do this again soon as things progress, good or bad or ugly. Let's stay in touch, and we'll see how we can work together.
All right, guys.
All right, good seeing you guys.
Good.
Take
All
it
right.
easy.
Y'all be well.
Bye, guys.